Hi, welcome to Mr. Dyer's Musings. I'm Mr. Dyer, and today we're going to be taking a look at sewing kits. As always, I like to thank my wife and family for their unconditional support. I'd like to thank my students and my scouts for always pushing me to be better, to try to learn more, read more. I'd like to thank my viewers, my subscribers. I appreciate you guys. I really, really do. Thank you for taking the time to watch this. I hope you get something out of it. If you're new to my channel, please check out my other videos and see if you like them. Please consider subscribing. I'd like to thank my patrons for Patreon. If you're new to my channel, I do have a Patreon site, and it's linked on in the description box. Please check it out. I do have extra videos if you like the minutia of material culture. That's where I give it, and I'm always welcome to answer questions and give a little bit more detail if there's something more specific that you want to know about any of the artifacts that we look at. All right, so today we're going to be looking at the sewing kit, and we're going to be looking at it in the context of scouting and why. Why do we have a sewing kit? And a lot of bushcraft kits that you see people on YouTube and Campcraft, it always surprises me that the majority of them really don't have any type of repair equipment with them. It blows my mind. Because in all the years that I've been reenacting and all the years that I've been scouting and stuff, if you're out in the woods and enough time, eventually you're going to get a snag, you're going to get a tear or something that's going to need repaired. I've had to repair tents on the fly. I've had to repair my fly. I've had to repair and sew a button for suspenders, belt loops, things like that. Like, it just blows my mind that that's something that's not included. So if you're going to be spending time outside, doing camping, campcraft, woodcraft, whatever, it just makes sense to have a sewing kit. And it doesn't have to be all that special. In my Civil War days, and if you research Civil War soldiers, their sewing kits had a traditional name called the housewife or huswife. I think it's just kind of a blended term, but housewife, it's a roll-up kit, and it had some extra fabric in there, it had some needles, had thread, and had buttons. And the bundle itself tends to take up about 2 to 3 inches of space, and it's usually about anywhere from a couple inches to 4 to 6 inches long. And you roll it up and you tie it together, and you've got it. In all the years that I did reenacting, it was nice to have a patch a few times, but even a patch, I think, would take up less space than that 4 to 6 inches by 2 inches housewife. And in a pack, I think it's important to save as much space and as much weight as possible. And that's one of the areas that I actually started to minimalize. Think about critically, what do I really use the most often and what do I need the most? The kit that I take Civil War reenacting, even honestly in my scouting pack, is this. It's a really small, it's an old Caps 10 or some type of 10. I don't even remember where I got this from. But it's an old Caps 10. And I actually got this idea from my reenacting major. So major, if you're on my channel and you're watching this, thank you for this idea. Because I used to carry one of those cloth roll-up housewives and stuff. But like I said, when I saw his, I was like, wow, you know what? That just makes sense. So in my kit, I carry a piece of beeswax. My mom, when I was growing up and learning how to sew, because I did have to sew on all my own merit badges, soap, a piece of soap would even work, but I always carry beeswax. Beeswax seems to work a little bit better. If you don't have beeswax, then paraffin wax is really good. You just use that for your thread. That way it keeps it from tangling up, and it goes through the fabric a lot better. Always carry a couple safety pins. Now for Civil War, if you're watching this, you know, my Civil War people, you know that safety pins are not period correct for the American Civil War. So, but there's that. Safety pins. Always carry extra buttons, either shirt buttons and brass buttons for my Civil War jacket. I carry a thimble. If you don't have a thimble, even just a piece of leather, you wrap it around your thumb or whatever. That can be pretty useful. And based off of my surgeon's impression, I've come to appreciate the use of a curved needle. I tend to carry a curved needle with me just in case. And this is my place where I keep my needles. And this also came from, the idea came from an original Civil War pocket kit that I have. I'll post a video up here of what that pocket kit entailed. I think it was my very first YouTube video. But in it, it had a piece of kid skin leather and it had original needles put in. And I'm like, man, you know what? That makes a lot of sense. Because if nothing else, again, I could use this as a for my thimble, right, or a thumb stall. And it holds the needles nicely in there. All I have to do is just fold it up like so, put it in, it's good to go. And also thread. Now I made this thread holder. This is made from ivory. I took a couple piano keys that I have because I was making historical dominoes. Maybe I'll do a video on my historic domino set. But I was making reproduction historic dominoes and I had a bunch of original ivory piano keys. And I made this little thread card that you can wrap it up. It has little notches in it so that the thread doesn't go anywhere. And that's pretty much all I tend to carry. I'll carry like a piece of fabric or two that are pretty small, usually about 6 inches by 4 inches. Really haven't found a need for anything much bigger than that. And it gets me through whatever I need. And once I get home, I can change out the patch or whatever. But it tends to be like a canvas material or a piece of drill material, something that's sturdy, not soft shirt fabric. I tend to keep something that's fairly thick and substantive that doesn't fray out as easily. That's my historic sewing kit. So let's take a look at the Boy Scout kits that I have. The two that I'm getting ready to show you, I honestly don't know if they were official Boy Scout kits. They could be military, they could be civilian, I don't know. But according to the catalogs, this is the style of sewing kits that were sold to scouts in the 1920s through the 1930s. Okay, so in the 1920s through the 1930s. And I have 2 different sizes, but they're essentially the exact same. So you open up the top here, and it has a thimble. And this is the original thimble that came with it when I bought it. And it had a couple of little spools inside of it. As you can see, one was khaki and one was white. So that's what makes me like, when I bought it, it's like, it's either military or it could be scouting. And it did have a really old needle with it. It did not have the needle holder that you see in the catalogs. So it's not complete. That's the smaller one. That's this little guy. The bigger one is a little bit tougher to get out. All right, so we got it here. So this exact same style, right? It's nice too. It's got the thimble. It's held in. Again, this is the same thimble that was when I bought it. And the spools that we have is a green and a white. Now, this is also considered khaki depending on when, or olive drab. I suspect that this one is probably military because of the amount of thread that's on it, the color of thread that's on it. And unlike my other example, it doesn't have a hollow core for the needle holder. My dog's in here now. It's gonna check out what I'm doing. So those are the two. And this next one is the cloth one. Now, I know how to date this one pretty well based off of the buttons that's inside of it. But it does have the Boy Scout logo. And these type of kits started getting sold to Scouts in the 1930s. When you open it up, try and make sure that my buttons don't come out. As you see, it's complete. It's got a little 2 pockets here for buttons, and it has, I think, 2 pockets. Nope, just one big pocket in here you could use for putting some patches and stuff. This is more like the traditional housewife or hussif used in Civil War. It's got a place for your scissors and your safety pins and needles. What's cool about these scissors is they got like the olive drab, they're plastic coated or I don't know, painted, but they still work really, really well. Still pretty sharp even after all these years. Now the buttons themselves that it came with, and maybe a Scout put some of these buttons in himself. Some of these buttons may not have been the issue buttons per se, but it has what appears to be a mother of pearl buttons, a couple different sizes, even a tiny like collar button, and they're even different shapes. So this one's like a disc, and this one is more like a plate. It's more convex in shape. And you have a couple of these olive drab buttons. You got a twofer, you got a 4-holer, and because the uniform shirts at the time had metal buttons, you have the metal buttons as well. Now this is where it makes it really easy to date these. So this one has the Sweet Ore logo on the back. So that automatically tells us that it was only sold for a very short period of time because Sweet Ore had the contract to make Boy Scout uniforms for a very short time in the late 30s. So we know that this kit here is from the late 30s. It's pretty neat, you know. I mean, for a historian trying to narrow it down, especially material culture, little clues like that can tell us a lot about what was being used by the population at the time. So when we take a look at these buttons here that are not Scout buttons, they're not made out of plastic. They are like legit mother of pearl buttons. Unlike today's mother of pearl buttons, they're just reproduced plastic. So I think that's kind of cool. I think that's cool anyways. So we know that our real stuff was still being used. Now this one here, even this one here is real mother of pearl. I was second guessing myself on this one, this little tiny one, but that's like legit mother of pearl. I think that's so cool. I think that's so cool. I hope you get giddy about stuff like that. Otherwise, maybe that's why you follow my channel, because you like the material culture aspect of it. So that's it. Like, that's a sewing kit. Scouts today still sell sewing kits. I want my Scouts and my troop to this spring or this summer to practice some sewing projects, something small. Maybe it's just a utensil bag for the fork and spoon and knife, just to get them used to some basic stitches. And maybe we'll get some patches. I got a bunch of just random patches. Maybe we'll practice sewing patches on a piece of fabric, just to increase that idea of self-reliance that scouting tries to promote. You know, if we give them the tools for the job, we also need to teach them how to use those tools. And it may seem small, it may seem minuscule, but sewing is one of those skills I think is kind of overlooked by most people. It surprises me how many adults don't know how to sew, when really it's not that hard. You just got to take the time and do it. That's it. I hope you like the video. I hope you learned something. I hope you please subscribe if you like the channel. If you like these videos, please share them with others. Help our channel grow. Help the learning. If you have some ideas, if you have some knowledge that you have about these kits, please share. I always appreciate it. Thank you so much. Give a kiss and hug to your loved ones, and take care.